You have the power to bring blessing, or you have the power to bring cursing into the life of another.
Dr. Tony Evans talks about the importance of using that power wisely.
Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit.
This is The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans, author, speaker, senior pastor of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas, Texas, and president of the Urban Alternative. It's been said that words are like seeds that get sown in the hearts of the people who hear them. Well, today, Dr. Evans explains how to make sure those seeds sprout into something delicious, not deadly, as he takes us to Proverbs chapter 18 for today's message.
A Greek philosopher asked his servant to provide the best possible meal for his guest. So when his guest arrived and he served the meal, he came out and served smothered tongue. The philosopher said, "Why is this the best meal?" He said, "Because this is what we use to bless people, communicate happiness, dispel sorrow, remove despair, help the faint-hearted, inspire the discouraged, and uplift mankind. So this is the best thing to eat, is the tongue." So I was a little curious. So he said, well, tomorrow I want you to bring the worst thing that you could possibly make. And he brought the tongue. He said, "Why'd you bring this?" He says, "Because with this same tool, you can break heads, break hearts, bring curses, destroy reputations, promote discord and strife, set wars in motion." In other words, he's saying the same thing that can do good for you can do bad for you. We've all heard the phrase, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." That's a lie. Everybody in here at some time in your life has been hurt by words. Most everybody in here has hurt somebody from time to time with words. Why is that? Proverbs 18 says in verse 20, "With the fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach will be satisfied. He will be satisfied with the product of his lips. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit." That world famous statement, death and life are in the same instrument, the tool behind your teeth. And of course, that's a reference to your speech, your use of words. He says that this instrument in our mouths, the tongue, in verse 20, will satisfy the stomach when you eat fruit. So you eat some fruit, you take it in your mouth, it enters your stomach, and you say, that was good. He says in the second half of the verse, he will be satisfied with the product of his lips. So the tongue doesn't only take things in, it produces things out. It goes in both directions. And so what he wants you to know is that you're going to eat the fruit of your tongue, and either it will be a helping of life or a helping of death. Life and death, he says in verse 21, are in the power of the tongue. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19, God says this when Moses was talking to Israel. He says, "I set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse." So when he says life and death, he doesn't mean you killing people physically with your tongue. He means you're bringing blessing or cursing with your tongue, which he calls life or death. Life is the enjoyment of the favor of God. Death is the removal of divine favor, so that you're no longer covered by God. So when he says that there's life and death in the power of the tongue, he says you have the power to bring blessing, or you have the power to bring cursing into the life of another. Proverbs 15 verse 4 says, "A wholesome tongue is a tree of life." In other words, you're supposed to, with your speech, breathe life into others. Because remember, it's a tool of life, that is, of blessing. And he calls it a powerful tool. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. We use our tongues flippantly to say what we think, say how we feel. But the question is, do we use it powerfully? There is power in the tongue to create blessing, and there's power in the tongue to create cursing. Some of us still haven't recovered from things that were said to us. That tongue was so powerful, we still haven't forgot it, and it happened when we were a kid. I'll never forget what you said to me, because that brained a curse over my life. I have not been able to get away from it. It has trapped me. It has kept me from having wholesome relationships with people. It has kept me, because he wants you to understand, it's not just words you say, it's power you're expressing. You got a loaded gun behind your lips. Proverbs 12, verse 18 says, reckless words pierce like a sword. Proverbs 13, verse 3 says, he who guards his lips guards his life, but he who speaks rashly will come to ruin. So what he's emphasizing, and of course there are hundreds of verses that deal with mouth, tongue, lips, speech, but all of them are talking about this is no small instrument. This 3 or so inches in your mouth, or its use, that is expression of words, can breathe life or death into a situation. You can kill it or you can give it life. Nuclear power is very beneficial. The kind of lives we get to live in America because of nuclear energy and nuclear power. But boy, you strap that thing to a bomb and it'll take a whole city out and everybody living in it, and it'll send you back to the Middle Ages. Because that same power that can cause us to live with lights on and appliances working and all that same power can destroy everything. So it is, life and death are in the tongue. That's why both God and the devil want control of it. But there's a war in your mouth between God's will and the devil's will to get you to express their will in your lips. Because they know when you express one of their wills in your lips, you are going to breathe life or death into a situation, blessing or cursing into a scenario. Well, when you know you've got that much power in your mouth, that's going to make you think about what you're saying and whether I really want the effect this could produce. It's very interesting that at the end of this verse, he brings up marriage. Verse 22, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord, right after he talks about life and death being in the power of the tongue. Because relationships are what are enhanced or destroyed by the tongue. Most of your struggle with your relatives you don't like or who don't like you have come out of conversations. Now, they may have done something to you, but I bet you your bottom dollar, they said some stuff too. And it produced just a nuclear reaction in you. And unfortunately, it can produce it so bad that you'll go to your grave never forgiving them. Because that thing latched onto your soul and became a curse in you. Like the husband who just went on his honeymoon, he said, now that we're married, I want to mention a few little defects I have noticed about you. Do you mind? Bride said, no, I don't mind. I don't mind. Just so you know, it was those little defects that kept me from getting a better husband. So it went south from there. It's like the man who told his wife he was mad at her about something. I don't know how anybody could be so beautiful and so dumb at the same time. She said, well, it's real simple. He made me beautiful so that you would love me. He made me dumb so I would love you. Because folk be killing each other with their tongues. Sometimes life and death can take place when the tongue doesn't do a thing. But words still do. Like the couple, they weren't talking to each other. They were not talking to each other. They weren't going to speak to each other. They were mad at each other. And so since he was mad, he wrote a note. He wrote a note. It says, wake me up at 5 o'clock so I can catch my flight. Because they had to go on a business trip. Wake me up at 5 o'clock so I can catch my flight. But he wasn't talking. He put it on her side of the bed. He woke up at 8 o'clock. Missed his flight. So he's ticked off. I told you to wake me up at 5 o'clock. She pointed to a piece of paper next to him. It's 5 o'clock. So she ain't talked, but she was speaking.
Well, when Dr. Evans comes back in just a moment, he'll have more to say about the dangers of underestimating the power of what we say. First, though, I wanted to remind you that today's message is the last installment in Tony's brand new series, Watch Your Mouth. So I don't want you to miss your chance to get a copy as our gift. Just contact us before the end of the day, make any contribution, whatever you feel God leading you to give, and we'll send you a copy of Watch Your Mouth to show our appreciation. If you've ever felt pain or regret after saying something you wish you hadn't, or if you just need help speaking more of God's words and fewer of your own, this book is for you. But today's the last day this special offer will be available, so contact us right away at tonyevans.org to make the arrangements. And when you do, you'll find out how to order Tony's newest book, Kingdom Marriage, even though it won't be out for a while yet. If you do that right away, you'll get a collection of free extras to go along with it, starting with the audio version Tony recorded of his bestseller, Kingdom Man. You'll also get the ebook version of Raising Kingdom Kids, a 50% off code to use on anything in our online resource center, and digital downloads of 3 messages on marriage we've never released before. This special offer ends on September 7th, so don't put it off. Visit tonyevans.org today to get the details. That's tonyevans.org. I'll have our contact information for you again later on. Right now, though, it's time to get back to today's lesson. Here's Dr. Evans.
Going back to the principle that we gave, when God wanted to create something, he used words. When Satan wanted to destroy something, he used words. Both of them used words, but they were exercising clout, power. And if you and I were to look at our tongues as having that much power, in the same way you would be careful with a gun because you got that much power. And I know we're not perfect, but in terms of perspective, when you say this thing has power to bring things into being for good or for bad, then of course there will be concern about what I say about in light of what I'm trying to achieve. You know? Colossians chapter 4, verse 6. Paul the apostle talks about speech, and he says in chapter 4, verse 6, let your speech always be with grace. Now, how often? Always be with grace. As though seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to every person. Now, what catches me there is the scope. Because the scope in that verse, he says always and every. Anybody like to put salt on your fries? The McDonald's fries, you know? Let me talk about salt because he says, I want your speech to have some flavor. Seasoning is intentional. You season food intentionally because you want it to have a certain kind of taste. In other words, you are and I am concerned about how it will feel when we bite it. And therefore we season it. He says, season your words always with salt. First of all, he says with grace. Grace has the idea of extending favor. Grace is the favor of God. So you are to seek the high ground in your speech. Again, we're not perfect, but we should be growing in the Spirit's control in the use of our tongue. So let's communicate in grace, to be gracious, with seasoning. That is, let's add some taste, because the better something tastes, the more likely it will be swallowed. The worse something tastes, the easier it is to spit out. Salt was also used in some of the Old Testament sacrifices. So they would put salt on some of the sacrifices as a way of expressing favor or flavor to God. So they would salt the sacrifice as they offered it. So, in other words, let your speech be an act of worship, because it was tied to the sacrifice. Another thing salt was used for in biblical days was as a preservative. Salt kept decay down. One of the reasons that you season your word with salt is you don't want things to decay more. You don't want the bacteria of the relationship to kill the relationship, because you refuse to put salt on it. And I'm going to speak what I want to speak the way I want to speak it, because this is me. But when salt is used right, one thing it will do, it will create thirst. People will want to communicate more because you've created thirst more for the conversation. You've created a thirst for the communication. Now, it doesn't work perfectly like that every time. Some people are fools. Some people, no matter how nice you try, how salty you make it, how much flavor you put on it, they're not going to accept it. Okay? And that's why there's so much in Proverbs about a fool. Okay? But he's not trying to make you the fool. He's trying to make the other person not receiving you the fool. He says that I want you to season your words with salt so that you will know how to respond to each person. Now that's a very interesting conclusion of that verse. He says, if you season your words with salt and if you speak with grace, you will know how you should respond to each person. In other words, when God sees you're using your lips to produce life, he will communicate to your lips. So you will know how to respond. In other words, if you're responding without grace, since he is a God of grace, then he will not participate in your response. So it will just be your humanity responding, or your satanic influence responding, because he will not operate outside of his grace. Now, he will operate with truth, but he will not operate outside of his grace. So the point being that life and death is in the power of the tongue, and how you communicate, what you communicate, is critical. The psalmist says in Psalm 141, verse 3, set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth, and keep the doors of my lips. So he calls your lips doors, and doors open and close, where your mouth opens and shuts. So he says, you have doors. Okay? Guard the door so that it only opens when it's supposed to, and it closes when it's supposed to. But because I'm not sure when to open it and when to close it, because mine open and closes at will, he says, set a guard, put a policeman in the front of this door so that it opens and closes when it's supposed to. Because the tongue is powerful. It is powerful to produce life. It is powerful to produce death. That is blessing or cursing. In southern Turkey, and this is true, there is a certain kind of crane, the bird crane. When they fly, they cackle. They give this cackling sound when they fly. The problem is that the cackling sound attracts eagles. And eagles love cranes for lunch. dinner, breakfast, and dessert. Therefore, an mature adult crane will pick up a small rock and put it in its mouth so that the sound of the crackle cannot be heard. Because it does not want to be eagle lunch. Because there's a guard that's been set over its mouth, over the door of its lips, that is controlling how much of the crackle gets out. So that because the eagle doesn't hear the sound, it doesn't then attack the crane. In other words, when this crane is flying, he has a sound that can bring death. But when properly guarded, it keeps his life. The psalmist says in Psalm 141, verse 3, to watch over my mouth, keep the doors of my lips, because either God will get a hold of it or the devil will get a hold of it. If the devil gets a hold of it, it's going to bring a curse. If God gets a hold of it, it's going to bring life, both to me and then through me.
Dr. Evans will come back in a moment to wrap up today's message and our current series with a challenge to spice up our speech God's way. First, though, take a moment to get in touch with us and request a copy of this brand new 11-part series by Dr. Evans called Watch Your Mouth, loaded with plenty of practical advice about keeping your tongue from causing trouble. It's perfect to share with your Sunday school class, small group, or Bible study. You can find out all about it by visiting us online at tonyevans.org. When you do, don't forget to check out that brand new book I mentioned earlier, also called Watch Your Mouth. It builds on what we've learned in our current study, and if you contact us before the end of the day, it's yours with our thanks when you help us keep Tony's teaching on this station with a contribution of any amount. At the same time, be sure to pre-order your copy of Kingdom Marriage so you don't miss out on all those free extras I told you about. Again, details are waiting for you right now at tonyevans.org, or call us at 1-800-800-3222. where staff members are always on hand day and night to help you with your resource requests. Again, that's 1-800-800-3222. When you ask somebody how they're doing, they might say something like, fine, under the circumstances. But Dr. Evans says believers were never meant to live under their circumstances. So tomorrow, he'll launch into a series that explains how to get more out of life, no matter what your situation looks like. Right now, though, he's back with these final comments for today.
So here's what I want you to do. The people in your life, whether it's family, whether it's friends, I want you to, on purpose, salt it down. I want you to put some flavor on your speech. Without compromising the content of truth, I want you to disarm them. They're used to you coming back at them the way they come at you. Because I was raised not to have anybody talking to me like that. And, I want you to season with salt because I just want to see what God does. Because he says he'll give you the word that you ought to answer with. Because he's now in control of the tongue. I want you to try that. That's why the Bible says, bless those who curse you. Bless those who curse you. Why would he tell me to do that? That's telling me to be a victim. That's telling somebody he can mess over me. No, because God says, when you do what I would have done, I will be involved in you doing it. So folk you used to giving them a piece of your evil mind. Folks you used to telling the worst of them, the worst about them. Let's recook this meal and let's put some seasoning on it. And let's see what God does with tongues that are under the Holy Spirit's control.
The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans is brought to you by the Urban Alternative and is made possible by the generous contributions of listeners like you.